Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Benaker, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. Simmi, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Simmi, your journey from founding Tints Streetwear to establishing Rise to Independence is truly inspiring. Please tell us more about these two initiatives and what initially sparked your passion for social impact and women empowerment.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so for founding Tints Streetwear and Rise to Independence, really Tints Streetwear is my clothing brand, but I also through my clothing brand, I'm also doing social impact and giving back to my community. So, Tints Streetwear, I sell sustainable, organic, and completely handmade clothing that's actually all made in India. And through my clothing brand, I'm able to support generational artisans. The art of hand embroidery and a lot of other indigenous art from India is actually dying due to the rise of fast fashion and other means of faster production. And through Tints Streetwear, I want to provide these artists and embroidery artists a platform to showcase their amazing and intricate art form. But also at the same time, Rise to Independence is a nonprofit that I also co-founded with a group of other people, and the purpose of Rise to Independence is to empower young women in Bangladesh. So I've been volunteering at the Sunchild Home in Dhaka, Bangladesh for a very long time, since 2018. And I actually went there with my mentor, Dr. Beverly Questad. She's a retired English teacher at my high school, and we're just very close friends. So I went with her, and she's actually the one who introduced me to these girls in Bangladesh. And we volunteered together at the Sunchild Home, and that was a very enlightening experience. And I had a lot of fun, and it also allowed me to learn a lot about life as well. Besides, helping these, underprivileged girls. But unfortunately, after the pandemic, the Sunchild Home had to dissolve, and some of these older girls in the orphanage, they were no longer being supported, or they couldn't be moved to like another home, like some of the younger girls. So actually 18 of these older girls were just kind of left on the street, or nowhere to go. And that's where we came together to form Rise to Independence, to provide these girls housing, to provide them, some of these girls want to go into vocational training, some of them want to pursue an education. So we're really, through Rise to Independence, providing these girls with like a life plan and the resources they need to be happy and successful. And through Tints, I have been able to donate some of my profits to help form Rise to Independence. But really, my vision with Tints is kind of like social entrepreneurship, is to grow the brand, so that I can further support these young girls.
Congratulations. It's so wonderful to hear everything that you're doing and how you're impacting in such a positive way these communities of women. You mentioned that you're looking at your life now as a result of these experiences with a completely new lens. Can you share more details behind that?
Of course, yeah. So I've been fortunate to have a lot of very different diverse experiences, you know, to working with Lucy Guo and Passes, to running my clothing brand through my nonprofit. And I think one thing that I've learned through these diverse experiences is, regardless of the situation, in terms of finding joy, that we can find joy in helping others, and that when we are seeking joy for ourselves, it actually helps. We're actually able to do that when we are helping others. And that's just one thing that I've learned in all these different experiences, diverse experiences that I've had. In terms of working with the girls in Bangladesh, that was a very, very different experience, and from, here in the United States. And one thing I've learned is that these girls, that they find happiness together, they find joy together. And even though they have lost so much, or they might not have the same things, or even a family like I do, they still are very hopeful for the future and they look forward for the future. I noticed that, yes, they do think about their past, but I noticed in the conversations that we have with these girls, they always talk about their future. They talk about what they're going to do today so that they can get closer to that. And I think that's another thing I learned is that today might not be the best day, but if we look towards the future, if we take even a small actionable step today towards that future, that's something to also be happy about.
Wonderful. And can you share a specific story of someone whose life has been transformed by the initiatives that you are leading?
Yeah, so there's this young girl. She joined the Sunchild Home when she was very young. Her name's Rubina, and her past story is very, it's very tumultuous. Her father unfortunately passed away and her mother remarried, and her stepfather no longer wanted to take care of her. So she lived with her grandmother, and her grandmother just couldn't support her. So that's when she came to the Sunchild Home. Right now, she's older. She's in our program, but she's actually excelling. She's excelling in school and other things. We're also providing dance and art classes and other fun activity, and she's just able to live in a stable environment, because otherwise she would have been trapped in this cycle of generational poverty or even child marriage. So right now she has at least hope for the future that she can do something and create independence and a life of her own.
How beautiful. And tell me about your younger days, because for someone that has achieved so much and to be in high school, I'm curious to know more about your younger days and the influences that you have had through your families, through your culture. What has really shaped who you are today? And when did this desire to have this positive impact on the world begin?
One thing that my parents valued is like doing something that you actually love and that you want to do, and they've supported me in any hobby or any project I've wanted to do. They've supported me, and I really appreciate that. And for me, one thing that I kind of learned from seeing, my immigrant parents kind of working so hard and taking new risks is that I should also try to take new risks and try new things like they did. So for me, I started my brand when I was in sixth grade. And for me, a lot of people ask me, like, oh, why did you start your brand? Or how did you start your brand? And I feel like kind of like the best thing and the best advice I could give is actually to just do it. That's the hardest thing is like you're 50% there if you just make it and do it. So that's what I did. I've always been very interested in art and drawing. My mother, she was also a painter. She used to draw and paint a lot, and I kind of learned that from her. So I first did oil painting and then I moved to digital art. And then just naturally, I kind of started creating my own clothing mock-ups, and kind of one day I just had to see them come to life. So I created them, and that's where I kind of got into this whole journey of starting a business. And even through running my clothing brand, I've learned so much kind of about how to interact with people and also just about business in general that's very applicable to anything I can do, after college or during college as well. Yeah, so just kind of like the main thing I learned from my childhood and experiences, and even going to India and visiting my grandmother, she had a very hard life, but she was always very kind, and she was always smiling. And I also learned to just take action and do things and don't be scared of what happens. It could fail, but I learned that through our failures, that's where we actually learn the most rather than our successes. And so, kind of just taking action, doing it, and then also through the process, kind of embracing and being happy and finding the little, joys in the little successes.
Starting a fashion brand at such a young age, what challenges have you encountered along the way, and how have you persevered through them in order to continue making a positive difference in this world?
When I was in sixth grade, I used to watch a lot of videos kind of on e-commerce, especially selling on Amazon. And I decided this probably wasn't, it wasn't, looking back, this wasn't the right move, but I decided I wanted to sell my creations on Amazon. And so I made some shirts and I put them on Amazon, and I did get sales from friends and family. However, after a couple weeks, the sales started to dwindle and I didn't get any, and Amazon actually sent me back the clothes. I was really disappointed because I thought that the product was great, and my parents, they supported me and they also thought it was good too. But I decided not to give up. A lot of, I think, people at that point could have just given up or just stopped kind of. And for me, what I decided to do was go back and try to create some different types of clothing. So I created different mock-ups, and I realized one thing learning is that, especially when you're starting out, it's all about the people and your community, especially when you're running a clothing brand. So I decided to actually go to local stores in Portland and in Washington. So I visited around 30 streetwear skate shops, and I would show them my mock-ups, and I would ask them for feedback, and they would tell me what they liked and what they didn't like. And at the same time, while I was getting this valuable feedback for what clothes they liked and didn't like, I was also building a connection and relationship with them, which eventually helped me locally grow into getting into these local retail stores. Because they could see me through this process of creating my brand, being young. So when I actually created my clothing, I would go to these stores and they would take it, and I was able to build up many stores. So 4 or 5 stores took my product. I was getting a good amount of sales because we had a high quality product. And through the many iterations I made, through showing them my designs, making changes, showing them again, and then creating the product, I was kind of able to almost perfect the product in some way. But still, at the same time, about me, I'm always trying to find something new, something new I can bring to the table, something innovative, in any field I will pursue in my life. So I realized that I should look back to my cultural heritage. And my grandmother, she actually used to hand embroider and hand make clothes for me. And I really appreciated the amount of love and time she spent doing this. And, unfortunately, she passed away, but I still look at these clothes and I remember the moment she gave it to me and how I felt. And, looking at it now, I just realized, how much she loved me. So through my clothing, I want to have that same experience, which is why instead of screen printing clothes, which is also not good for the environment because there's toxic inks, I decided to kind of go back to my culture and incorporate hand embroidery. So that's why all the clothes that I sell, and in my future jobs, I also want to continue making hand embroidered clothes and sharing that with the world. So through doing that, once I introduced my hand embroidered collection and kind of my story and my cultural heritage, that's when I saw the true success, and that's when I was able to connect with a lot of people and get into a lot of stores, and I became the best seller in the local Portland retail shop, just because of the high quality hand embroidered products. And at the same time, I feel like fast fashion is here, and it's not good because they're made with polyester and synthetic fabrics, which is, it's not good for the environment, but a lot of people don't know. It's also not very good for your skin, especially if you wear it every day for, many years. That can really add up. So just being conscious in, your lifestyle and what you're wearing on your body is very important. So through Tints, I also sell organic clothing as well, that's made with 100% organic cotton. And I really want to push this message of sustainability and love through my brand while also empowering these women in Bangladesh and, yeah, supporting them. So, in terms of how I grew my brand even further, that's when I did collaborations with some artists. For example, I've worked with Charm Ladonna. She's a choreographer for many big events. And then I've also worked with Lucy Guo. She's a co-founder of Scale AI. Right now, I work kind of with her very often for passes where we do a lot of different merch drops for her company. And I've done a collaboration with Chase the Money for a duffel bag, and we've given it to many, people like Drake, Gunna, Offset. Those are some musicians that we've given our bag to. For me, I've been doing this since sixth grade, but actually, if you think about it, I only saw success when I was in 11th grade, which I know is still very young. I know it's still very young, but if you think about it, it actually took a long time for me to see that success. But one thing I really appreciate, even though it took a long time, is actually the journey and everything I learned. I learned a lot of things on the journey, and even though I had these successes which were great and I really valued it, but I think what was more impactful for me was that journey and the mistakes that I made.
And how you're able to not let yourself not be disappointed by the challenges that you face, but rather look and explore new avenues in order to continue having a positive impact, which is really, really beautiful. Looking ahead, are you envisioning actually to pursue a career in fashion once you finish your high school? What are your aspirations moving forward?
Yeah, so moving forward, I got accepted to Stanford, and I did commit there and I will be going there. And I actually recently went to the Stanford Tree Hacks just last week. And going to the Tree Hacks and competing there, it further kind of, and seeing that environment and culture, I feel like regardless of what I do, I know that I want to create, I want to innovate, you know, ho- ideally with technology. And that's what I'm thinking, is pursuing a path in potentially computer science, but also, creating an impact and change. And I want to also be able to work with people, because I really enjoy that. I really enjoy working with people, interacting with people, and sharing ideas, because one thing I've learned is like often people can bring a new perspective that you haven't even thought of, like in your brain at all, which I think that's very cool. Yeah, so that's what I'd want to do. But I do know that I am going to still continue running Tints. I feel like there's still so much room for growth of the brand and sharing my message, but also, through Tints, I am supporting the girls through the profits, and I want to keep growing the brand so that I can keep supporting these girls, because that was like a streamlined way that I've done that. And I'm always just interested in fashion, so I want to also continue growing my community. There's this club at Stanford called the Fashion X Club, and they have about 280 members. So there's a huge community there for me to collaborate with, other people, other students, and my classmates to growing tints or a similar initiative to that.
As I'm thinking about all the points that you have highlighted relating to the environment, what has shaped your view on the importance on making eco-friendly choices?
For me, it actually all comes back to working with these girls in Bangladesh. I used to do remote Zoom classes with these girls during the pandemic when their school closed, and also visiting them in person and staying at that orphanage with Dr. Beverly Questad. And seeing these girls, I realized kind of, I guess, how kind of little they had. And for me, who, I come from a very stable household. I have a roof over my head. When I want food, I have it. When I want water, I have it. For me, I'm always very conscious, whether it could be the simplest things, like while brushing my teeth, I always close the water. I don't take super long showers. I never waste food. If I don't, like, I try to take the exact portions I'm going to eat. So those are like my lifestyle choices. But through running my brand, creating organic, sustainable, eco-friendly clothing, it's not only good for the environment, it's also good for your skin. I learned that, a lot of synthetic polyester clothes, they're not biodegradable. And actually, I believe there's garbage trucks loads of clothes kind of every second almost going to waste. And I would see these videos, I would educate myself on that, and I realized that, right now maybe we can get by with it, but in a couple years or in a couple decades, our future generations, we can't do that. And we need to start planting the seed and creating a solution for these problems. And that's why I feel like sustainable fashion is the future. I think our society is going to become more aware. My generation is going to become more aware, and we're going to find innovative ways that we can do it while still being affordable, which is also something that I want to do. But yeah, through running Tints and working with these girls in Bangladesh, I've been able to make my own lifestyle choices. I'm very conscious of the foods that I eat, what I wear as well. You can actually see kind of what each clothing is made before you buy it, and kind of just researching about that. That's very interesting to me, and I feel like, creating these lifestyle changes, you feel good about yourself too. So yeah, those are just some ways that I try to be sustainable and mindful of the environment.
It's very clear that you have a very strong purpose that you
Hmm.
have developed. And some individuals that may be of the same generation, the same age as you, may be struggling even to find their path, even to choose in which direction to head in terms of their studies, in terms of their careers, and so on. What key messages would you give to those individuals that may be unsure of where to begin or which direction to head in order to also have a positive impact on this world?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say the first thing that I recommend is kind of brainstorm what are things that you're first already passionate about. And it can be anything from sports to cooking, to, my clothing brand to programming. It can really be anything, or writing, reading. Kind of figure out what generally you're passionate about and what you like to do. Now, the second thing that you can also do after that is I would recommend somehow engaging with that community. For me, what I would do, especially here in Portland, Oregon, that's where the Nike headquarters are. There's a lot of fashion events, a lot of networking events with individuals. If possible, try to find, community local in your local community events that's happening so that you can learn more about it. You can connect with other people. You can find mentors, because that's what I did. And I feel like by doing that, that helped me stay very motivated. And that also kind of gave me like a role model I could look up to that I knew and learn from. And that really helped. So once you kind of find these local events or your community, and if you can't do that, I'm sure if you connect with people on LinkedIn, or you could find like an online community as well, that could also be very motivating and inspiring. And then once you've done that and just kind of learn more about that industry, or whatever that may be, and then once you learn more about that industry, try to figure out what gaps are in the industry, maybe that you could solve. I believe every person has their own diverse, unique perspective, and that each perspective is valuable, and your solution is valuable. It may be hard and may take a while. This is not something that can, happen in a couple of days. It will take a bit of time, but once you figure out kind of what that gap is in that industry and what you bring to the table, I would recommend kind of sharing that with other members in the community or your mentors, which you find, through connecting with people on LinkedIn or going through events, and kind of gaining advice from them and gaining their input. um, I feel like if you're around my age, there's these programs like Ashoka Changemakers. They have the Talkable Ambition Accelerator, which I did. They also have the Disney Dreamers Academy, which is for high schoolers. And that's where I met a bunch of fashion stylists and musicians who gave me a bunch of feedback and I was able to collaborate with. So the main thing I learned is also like these events, there's a lot of different programs for young high schoolers or young adults that people can kind of apply to. And then once you figure out your gap and your solution kind of to this gap, I recommend literally just doing it, just actually creating it. I feel like a lot of people are very hesitant sometimes to actually put their idea and their solution out there because they feel like it could fail or they would be embarrassed. But just putting it out there, you'll be able to understand how it works and what continued iterations you need to make. And through this entire journey and process, you not only build your confidence when it comes to meeting and speaking to new people, because like that's what I did. Before, I was very hesitant to just going up to like a store owner and talking to them and being bold and asking them for feedback on my product. That used to be something very kind of I used to be scared of, but now I kind of just do it because I learned that they actually really like it and that we can form an amazing valuable kind of connection through doing that. So, kind of just putting your solution out there. Don't be afraid to fail, because through those failures, that's where you actually get to learn. And that's where you get to kind of know what your next step is going to be. And I feel like just putting your product out there, you will be able to figure out what you need to do next.
And final question, if you could collaborate with any artist or designer or a person that has really inspired you up to now for a special collection of your Tints Streetwear, who would it be and what would be the theme?
So, if I could collaborate with anyone, I feel like for me, I would love to collaborate with someone like Tory Burch. She's someone who I follow her story very closely, and her as a woman, I really look up to her a lot. I've never met her, but through her brand, she's been able to impact so many women, provide them funding so that they can start their brands or whatever they hope to do through the Tory Burch Foundation. And I really admire and appreciate, how she's giving back through her brand. And that's kind of the similar motto that I'm trying to incorporate with Tints. I would love to collaborate with her because she gives a very high quality product. She knows a lot about fashion design. And besides that, though, she also gives back to the community a lot. So I want to kind of learn from her. That would be great. That would be so cool if I could like actually learn from her in person and kind of hear her ideas. Because I learned that through collaboration, that's actually when it's not just okay, you're collaborating, creating a new product. Your two brains are coming together, or a group of people are coming together to create something very cool and very innovative. And I really like that process rather than the end product. So if I were to collaborate with her, I would, appreciate that process and kind of take everything in on all the knowledge she would have to share.
Amazing. Simi, it's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. I'm so inspired by your journey and all the amazing things that you have done to date and all the plans and future developments that you'll be pursuing. It's super, super exciting. I wish you tremendous success and really look forward to staying in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. This conversation was very insightful for me and gave me a time to reflect on my journey and where I find joy and what I see in the future. And I really enjoyed it.